She walked the empty halls of Elite Medical Center every night, invisible in her security uniform, while million-dollar surgeries happened around her. To everyone, Maya Rodriguez was just another minimum wage guard. But when she burst into an operating room and screamed, "Stop!" mid-surgery, what she revealed about herself would shake the entire medical world to its core, because the woman they'd been ignoring for 2 years wasn't who they thought she was at all. The fluorescent lights of Elite Medical Center hummed their eternal song at 11:47 p.m., casting sterile shadows across marble floors that reflected the city's most prestigious hospital like a mirror. Maya Rodriguez adjusted her black security uniform for the 100th time that shift. The polyester fabric rough against her olive skin, a constant reminder of how far she'd fallen. At 34, she moved through these pristine hallways with the practiced invisibility of someone who'd learned that being seen could be dangerous. Her reflection caught in the polished glass of the cardiac wing's entrance. Dark hair pulled into a regulation bun, tired brown eyes that had seen too much, hands that once performed miracles now carrying a simple radio and flashlight. To the doctors rushing past in their designer scrubs, she was furniture. Useful, necessary, but unremarkable. A ghost haunting the halls of her former life. But Maya saw everything. She knew Dr. Harrison Blake always ordered his coffee at exactly 6:15 a.m., black with 2 sugars, and that his hands shook slightly before every major surgery, not from fear, but from the 3 shots of espresso he downed to stay sharp. She knew Nurse Patricia Williams kept a photo of her grandson tucked inside her stethoscope case and cried quietly in supply closet B every anniversary of her daughter's death. She knew the night cleaning crew spoke in hushed whispers about the ghost surgeon who'd once walked these halls, a brilliant doctor who'd vanished without explanation. They had no idea they were talking about her. Maya's journey to this midnight shift had begun 3 years ago in courtroom 7 of the Cook County Courthouse, where her life had been systematically destroyed by a pharmaceutical company's legal team. Dr. Maya Elena Rodriguez, Johns Hopkins Medical School valedictorian, youngest cardiac surgeon ever admitted to Massachusetts General's residency program, the woman who'd pioneered a groundbreaking technique for pediatric heart repair, had been accused of medical malpractice that resulted in a patient's death. The accusation was a lie, a carefully constructed lie designed to protect Meridian Pharmaceuticals from a lawsuit that would have exposed their defective heart valve implants. Maya had discovered the defect during surgery, had tried to blow the whistle, had fought for patient safety. In return, they'd made her the scapegoat. The legal fees had consumed her savings. The stress had destroyed her marriage. The suspension from practice had killed her career. By the time the truth finally emerged, buried in documents that surfaced 2 years too late, Maya had lost everything: her medical license, her reputation, her identity. The woman who'd once saved lives with instruments of precision now earned $14.50 an hour, walking empty hallways with a security badge. But tonight, as she made her rounds through the cardiac wing, Maya felt the familiar weight of knowledge pressing against her chest. Through the observation windows, she could see the controlled chaos of Trauma Bay 3, where the hospital's elite team was preparing for an emergency surgery that had everyone on edge. The patient was Senator Catherine Walsh's 19-year-old daughter, Emma, who'd been rushed in after a catastrophic car accident on Lakeshore Drive. The media was already circling outside like vultures, their satellite trucks creating a secondary crisis for hospital administration. This wasn't just another surgery, it was a career-making or career-ending procedure that would be dissected in medical journals and newspaper headlines. Dr. Harrison Blake stood at the scrub station, his usually perfect silver hair slightly disheveled, stress lines etched deep around his blue eyes. At 42, he was the hospital's golden boy, the cardiac surgeon whose success rate was legendary, whose waiting list stretched 6 months, whose techniques were studied in medical schools worldwide. Tonight, he carried the weight of expectations that would have crushed a lesser man. "Where are the updated scans?" he barked at a passing technician, his voice sharp with tension. Maya paused in her rounds, her trained eye catching something that made her blood freeze. Through the security monitors in her booth, she could see the surgical team's preparation, and something was terribly, horribly wrong. The imaging displays showed conflicting information. The CT scan on monitor 1 showed massive internal bleeding on the left side, But the X-ray on monitor 2 indicated trauma to the right. Maya's heart pounded as she leaned closer to the screens, her medical training overriding years of forced silence. She'd seen this before. In her former life, she'd encountered this exact scenario: mixed up patient files, switched imaging, the kind of catastrophic error that killed patients and destroyed careers. The kind of error that was about to happen to Emma Walsh. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for her radio, then stopped. Who would believe her? She was a security guard, a disgraced former doctor whose word meant nothing in these halls. But Emma Walsh was 19 years old, the same age Maya had been when she first dreamed of becoming a surgeon, the same age as the daughter she'd never had because her marriage had crumbled under the weight of false accusations. The elevator seemed to take forever as Maya rode up to the surgical floor, each ding marking seconds that could mean the difference between life and death. Her security badge granted her access to areas most people couldn't reach. A bitter irony that the woman they'd cast out still held keys to their most sacred spaces. Through the small window in the OR prep room, Maya could see Dr. Blake reviewing the surgical plan with his team. The confident gestures, the assured nods, the complete trust in technology that was about to betray them all. Maya had stood in his shoes countless times, had felt that same surge of purpose and responsibility. Now she stood on the outside, watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. "Dr. Blake," a resident called out, "we're ready for incision." Maya's heart stopped. She burst through the doors just as the scalpel touched skin. "Stop!" Her voice cut through the sterile air like a gunshot. The entire surgical team froze. Dr. Blake's hand hung suspended over the patient, the scalpel catching the harsh operating lights. 6 pairs of eyes turned toward the woman in the security uniform who'd just committed the ultimate breach of protocol. "What the hell?" Dr. Blake's voice was ice-cold fury. "Security, what are you doing in my OR?" Maya's legs felt like water, but her voice was steady. "The imaging is wrong. You're operating on the wrong side." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. The anesthesiologist looked up from his monitors. The head nurse stepped back. Dr. Blake's face flushed red with rage and humiliation. "Get this woman out of here," he commanded. "Now! Call hospital security." "I am hospital security," Maya said quietly. "And you're about to kill this girl." Dr. Blake's scalpel clattered to the floor. The room fell silent, except for the steady beep of monitors and the hiss of ventilators. Maya stepped forward, her security uniform suddenly feeling like armor rather than shame. "Look at the X-ray again," she said, pointing to the wall monitor. "The serial number doesn't match the patient ID. Someone uploaded the wrong file to the main system." Dr. Blake's confidence wavered. "I've been doing surgery since before you could spell hospital." "Security guards don't give medical advice." Maya met his gaze steadily. "Former cardiac surgeons do." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Dr. Blake's mouth opened, then closed. The surgical team exchanged bewildered glances. Maya stepped closer to the imaging display, her movements precise and professional. "My name is Dr. Maya Elena Rodriguez," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Johns Hopkins Medical School, class of 2015, summa cum laude, cardiac surgery residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, board certified by the American Board of Thoracic Surgery. And that X-ray you're about to follow will kill Emma Walsh." The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Blake slowly approached the imaging station, his hands no longer steady. Maya pulled up the patient database on the wall terminal, her fingers moving with the muscle memory of someone who'd navigated these systems thousands of times. "Here," she said, pointing to the screen. "Patient ID 4791-Emma Walsh, age 19. But this X-ray is labeled 4917-Harold Chen, age 67. Someone made a data entry error. The trauma is on the opposite side." Dr. Blake stared at the woman in the security uniform who had just saved his career and a young woman's life. His voice was barely audible. "Dr. Rodriguez, would you assist?" Maya shook her head slowly. "I can't. I'm not licensed to practice anymore." Her voice carried the weight of old pain. "Medical malpractice lawsuit. Lost everything fighting a false accusation about defective heart valves. No hospital would hire me after that." She moved toward the scrub station anyway, her hands already reaching for surgical gloves. But I remember. What happened next would become legendary in medical circles, though the full story would remain secret for months. Maya guided Dr. Blake through the most complex procedure of his career, her knowledge sharp and precise despite 3 years away from the operating table. She couldn't touch the patient. Legally, she wasn't allowed, but her eyes and voice became his hands. "There's a tear in the hepatic artery," Maya murmured, studying the monitors. "2 centimeters from the branch point. You'll need to clamp above and below before you can repair it." Dr. Blake moved with newfound precision, following her guidance. "I see it. Pressure's holding. Good. Now check the spleen. The impact would have caused secondary damage." For 4 hours and 17 minutes, they worked together in perfect synchronization. The disgraced security guard and the star surgeon, united by the sacred purpose of saving a life. Maya's hands never touched the patient, but her spirit guided every movement, every decision, every crucial moment that meant the difference between life and death. When Emma Walsh's vitals finally stabilized and the monitors showed strong, steady rhythms, the OR staff stood in stunned silence. Dr. Blake turned to Maya, his surgical mask pulled down, his face pale with exhaustion and awe. "You saved her life," he said simply. Maya was already removing her borrowed surgical cap, her dark hair falling around her shoulders. "You saved her life. I just helped you see clearly." The next morning brought chaos that would reshape Elite Medical Center forever. The story didn't break in the medical journals first. It exploded across social media when a surgical technician posted a TikTok video about the security guard who stopped surgery. Within hours, #SecuritySurgeon was trending worldwide. The video showed Maya in her uniform, standing confidently beside the imaging display, pointing out the error that would have killed a patient. The comments poured in, "This woman is a hero. Why is a doctor working security? Fire everyone who ignored her." Dr. Blake spent the morning fielding calls from reporters, medical boards, and hospital administrators. But his first priority was finding Maya, who disappeared after the surgery, returning to her security rounds as if nothing had happened. He found her in the hospital cafeteria at 6:30 a.m., sitting alone with a cup of coffee and a newspaper, still wearing her security uniform. She looked up as he approached, her brown eyes tired but alert. "Dr. Rodriguez," he said, sitting across from her. "We need to talk." Maya folded her newspaper carefully. "Nothing to talk about. Emma Walsh is alive. That's all that matters." "It's not all that matters," Dr. Blake insisted. "You saved my career last night. Hell, you saved my life. If I'd made that cut," he shuddered, "the wrong surgical site, I would have been finished." Maya sipped her coffee, studying his face. "You're a good surgeon, Dr. Blake. You just needed better information. Why didn't you tell anyone about who you are?" The question hung between them like a bridge Maya wasn't sure she wanted to cross. She was quiet for a long moment, watching the early morning shift change through the cafeteria windows. "Who would have believed me?" she finally said. "I'm the security guard, the woman who lost her license, the doctor who was too arrogant to admit when she was wrong. At least, that's what the newspaper said." Dr. Blake leaned forward. "What really happened?" Maya's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "I discovered that Meridian Pharmaceuticals had manufactured defective heart valves, hairline cracks that would fail within 6 months of implantation. I reported it to my chief of surgery, to the FDA, to anyone who would listen. Meridian's response was to destroy my credibility. They claimed I'd made surgical errors that led to patient deaths. They had lawyers, money, influence. I had the truth. And the truth wasn't enough? The truth is never enough when it threatens billion-dollar profits," Maya said bitterly. "They buried me in legal proceedings, destroyed my reputation, made me radioactive in the medical community. By the time independent investigators confirmed the valve defects, I'd already lost everything." Dr. Blake was quiet for a moment. "I remember that case, the Meridian scandal, but I never connected it to the security guard who walks your halls every night." Maya's smile was sad. "Why would you? I'm invisible here. Just another working-class woman trying to pay her bills." "You're not invisible to me anymore," Dr. Blake said firmly. and you won't be invisible to anyone else after today." He was right. By noon, news crews had surrounded Elite Medical Center. The story of the security guard who'd prevented a medical disaster had captured the public imagination in a way that transcended typical medical news. This wasn't just about a surgical error. It was about class, justice, redemption, and the hidden brilliance that society overlooks. Maya tried to avoid the cameras, but her anonymity was shattered when a former colleague from Massachusetts General recognized her in the viral video. Dr. Sarah Chen, now a department head at Johns Hopkins, posted a lengthy Facebook tribute that went viral within hours. "This is Dr. Maya Rodriguez, the most brilliant surgeon I ever worked with. She was destroyed by corporate greed and medical politics, but she never stopped being a healer. Last night she proved that excellence doesn't disappear. It just waits for the right moment to save lives." The Medical Board of Illinois received over 10,000 emails demanding Maya's license be restored. Dr. Blake used his influence to expedite the review process, personally presenting evidence of the pharmaceutical conspiracy that had ruined her career. Medical schools added her case to their ethics curricula. Patient advocacy groups hailed her as a hero. But the most important moment came 3 weeks later, when Emma Walsh, recovered and healthy, walked into Elite Medical Center to thank the woman who'd saved her life. Maya was working her usual night shift when Emma appeared in the security office, accompanied by her parents and a small army of reporters. The 19-year-old college student had bright eyes and a clear surgical scar that would fade with time. "Dr. Rodriguez," Emma said, her voice steady despite the cameras, "I wanted to thank you. Not just for saving my life, but for showing me what it means to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you everything." Maya stood slowly, emotion tightening her throat. "You don't need to thank me. I'm just glad you're okay." "I'm more than okay," Emma said. "I'm changing my major to pre-med because of you." The story could have ended there, with redemption and restored honor. But Maya's impact rippled far beyond one saved life or one restored career. The Maya Protocol became standard practice in hospitals nationwide, mandatory double-checking of patient imaging and surgical plans. Medical schools established the Rodriguez Fellowship for students from underrepresented backgrounds. Security guards across the country reported increased respect and recognition for their observations. 6 months after that night in the OR, Dr. Maya Rodriguez walked through the doors of Elite Medical Center wearing scrubs instead of a security uniform. The medical board had not just restored her license, they'd issued a formal apology and awarded her a commendation for excellence in patient safety. Dr. Blake had personally recruited her to lead the hospital's new patient safety initiative, a program designed to prevent the kind of errors that had nearly killed Emma Walsh. But Maya kept her old security badge in her desk drawer, a reminder that wisdom could come from anywhere. And sometimes the person who saves your life is the one you never thought to ask. Her first day back in the OR, Maya stood at the scrub station where she'd once prepared for surgery as a rising star, then later where she'd borrowed gloves to save a life. Dr. Blake appeared beside her, preparing for a complex cardiac procedure they would perform together. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. Maya looked through the window at Emma Walsh, who was observing from the gallery as part of her pre-med studies. The young woman who'd nearly died was now passionate about medicine, determined to prevent other patients from falling through the cracks of a flawed system. "None," Maya said firmly. "I lost everything once, but I found something better. The knowledge that healing isn't about titles or prestige. It's about seeing clearly, speaking truth, and never being too proud to start over." They scrubbed in silence, two surgeons united by the sacred trust of their calling. As they entered the OR together, Maya caught her reflection in the polished steel of the surgical lights. The woman looking back wasn't the broken security guard who'd haunted these halls in uniform. She wasn't even the young surgeon who'd been destroyed by corporate greed. She was something new, a healer who'd been tested by fire and emerged stronger, wiser, and more committed than ever to the ancient promise of first, do no harm. The surgery that day was perfect. No errors, no complications, no drama. Just the quiet miracle of skilled hands guided by experience, wisdom, and the unshakable knowledge that every life, whether wealthy or poor, powerful or forgotten, deserved the very best care medicine could provide. Maya's story spread far beyond the medical community, becoming a symbol of resilience and second chances. Security guards sent her letters describing how her example had given them courage to speak up when they noticed problems. Former medical professionals who'd been driven from their careers by false accusations found hope in her return. Young doctors learned that true success wasn't measured in prestige or money, but in the lives touched and saved. But perhaps the most important legacy was the simplest one. Elite medical center and hospitals across the country became places where every voice mattered, where observation was valued over hierarchy, and where the night shift security guards' concerns received the same attention as the chief of surgery's orders. Maya Rodriguez had lost everything once, but in the end, she'd gained something more valuable than her old life could have ever provided. The unshakable knowledge that healing, like justice, belonged to everyone brave enough to claim it. The patient she saved that night went on to become a doctor herself, specializing in emergency medicine and patient advocacy. Dr. Emma Walsh often told medical students about the security guard who taught her that heroism looked nothing like what she'd expected. It looked like a woman in a polyester uniform who'd refused to stay silent when silence would have meant death. And late at night, when the halls of Elite Medical Center hummed with the quiet activity of healing, security guards walked their rounds with a new understanding. They weren't just protecting equipment and enforcing rules. They were the eyes and ears of medicine itself, the watchers who ensured that no patient, no matter how powerless, would ever be forgotten or ignored again. Maya's badge still hung in the security office, beneath a plaque that read, Dr. Maya Rodriguez, healer, hero, guardian of truth. It served as a daily reminder that sometimes the most important surgery isn't performed with a scalpel, but with the courage to cut through indifference and expose the truth that saves lives. In the end, Maya hadn't just saved Emma Walsh's life. She'd saved the soul of medicine itself, proving that healing belonged not to the privileged few, but to anyone brave enough to see clearly and speak truth in the face of power. And that, perhaps, was the greatest surgery of all.